Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Reds Rundown podcast, hosted by two lifelong Reds fans and journalists. I'm Rob. He's Joe, and we appreciate you taking the time to join us today. Joe, how are we doing?
Doing all right. Probably perfectly predicted the Reds week. That was pretty cool, even though it wasn't the most fun. And also, the NFL draft is over, which means it's officially getting to be more of summer baseball, which I like. The weather's nicer, so it's good times. We got some big games coming up.
Yeah, no, I'm really excited about it. I will be going to our game on Friday. It sounds like you're going to be going to the game on Sunday, maybe, potentially. Okay, officially now. All
Yep.
right, cool. So we'll be
Tickets
seeing
are in.
the Orioles games, one of those games. If you happen to see us and you're a fan, please come say hi. We're not that shy, so we'll gladly say hi, talk some Reds baseball with you. I'll be with my dad. I don't know who you're going with, but yeah, hopefully if you guys see us and you're interested in saying hi, we're more than welcome to. But we're excited to talk about this week because I think there's a lot to discuss. To be honest with you, I'm loving this team, Joe, but also very frustrated with them. But I love them just because of the potential and the grit that they have. I will preface it with that. Let's move in, as always, to our question of the day. Do you think Hunter Green can ever be consistent? And this is something that I've been seeing trending a little bit from people on Reddit, Twitter, all that kind of stuff. Feels like that's a really big discussion. It's one that we have a segment that we will be talking about the streakiness of this team. So I'm not going to dive too much into the consistency with Hunter Green myself. Joe, if you have any comments on it, or do you want to wait?
I will wait because I think we're going to talk about a couple of his starts this week, and then also, like you said, if we're going to talk about it, then I will wait. But I do think it's a fair question.
Okay, yeah. So let us know in the comments below again, and if you are on Spotify, feel free to at Joe or myself and let us know what your thoughts are on this topic. We will be giving ours a little bit later. Instead, we will be moving on straight into the Phillies series. As Joe said, we did predict this one correctly. Very happy about that. Well, actually would have loved for it to be a 3-1, but, that is what it is. 2-2 series tie with the Phillies. But overall for the season, we went 4-3 against them. So we are holding a very important head-to-head matchup against them. It's kind of crazy to think that we're not even like a quarter of the way through the season and we're already done playing the Phillies for the year. So, that is what that is. Excuse me. But it was a 7-0 loss to start the week, on that Monday. The Reds were only able to manage 2 hits. Hunter Green was able to go length, but still gave up some runs because of different injuries. Casey Legumina came in, did not look great either, but that seems to be how it goes sometimes. You head into then the Tuesday game. Reds go and win 8-1 in this one. A lot of big hits by Encarnacion Strand. Probably has one of his best games of the entire season. Ellie was doing his thing. Espinal, Joe's new favorite player, at least on Twitter recently. He had a pretty nice game, to say the least. Andrew Abbott struggled a little bit. It was more just kind of surprising to see them take him out, but he gets through 4 innings. Fernando Cruz comes in, also having a humongous season so far, saving the Reds' butts in multiple big situations. Sam Moll also returned for his first game of action for the 2024 season and had a good outing. So Reds move on. They win that first game, or their first game of the series. They go back-to-back, heading into the Wednesday game, winning 7-4. Some big hits again from Benson, De La Cruz, Tyler Stevenson, Espinal, yet again, having a good day. Lodolo, not looking as sharp as he did in his last start, but still 5 quality innings, 4 strikeouts, only 3 runs given up. Bullpen came in, got the job done. Reds got a pretty needed win there because then the dreaded Thursday game, for some reason, they lose 5-0 in the afternoon. Zach Wheeler dominating as he seems to do. Nick Martinez doing what he seems to do, which is just do enough to keep them potentially in games. But giving up 5 runs, still not ideal, including a big home run to Bryce Harper, who had just had his child and apparently has superpowers after having children. So, Joe, what do you think of this series? 2-2 series, tie technically in this one. Again, Reds win it overall 4-3 for the season. But it feels like to me it was a story of literally like two teams almost.
Yeah, like you said earlier, it's good to be done with the Phillies for the rest of the year. Don't want to face them when they're at full speed, hopefully. And also, mentioned last week that they have trouble with the good teams and they beat up on the bad teams. The Phillies, we said, are like an above average team. Made the playoffs last year. Getting 4 out of 7 of them is very, very huge. It's the only team I think that we've won a series against so far this year that has a winning record still. Although your Nationals are coming on, Rob. But no, I do think this is the series that really, I think to me, like we had these discussions about the Reds being streaky, but this one really stuck out to me. When you lose 7-0, you win 8-1, you win 7-4, you lose 5-0. These mentioned that if you were going to win a lot of these games, I thought you had to be a very good pitching duel, and that's not what happened. So it's cool that they won 2 games still, but just those bats that not coming through, I think is going to be a bigger issue as we go along, because we avoided Aaron Nola in the series. Wheeler we did face, and that's understandable that you lose, but can we put a run across at least? Can we put up a little battle? So that's something that I think we have to get to at the bottom of here is we need to find some more bats, and I know we're going to talk about one bat later on that might be coming back here soon. So,
well, and I mean, let's be honest, 5 hits in those 2 games that they lost, that's what we're talking about. That's bad. So you don't want to do that pretty much ever. 5 hits a game, I think, at a minimum shows at least a decent offense to me. So, this Philly series was very frustrating for me to watch, to be honest with you, because it just felt like at different points the team was just I shouldn't say frustrating. It's just they're very young. We are seeing how young this team is in this type of a series, whether it's pitching, whether it's hitting. They're just swinging at a lot of weird stuff in those games that they're not hitting well in. We'll dive deeper into it, like I said, with this. But this series, I think, truly exemplified their major issues that they have, to be honest with you. And it showed, though, what this team, its current iteration is, and the potential that they still have, even with all the injuries and everything else. So I will give them credit for battling out this series. I think it was their first 4-game series of the year. I'm glad that that they had it at home. I'm sure that helped quite a bit. But they should be thanking their lucky stars that freaking Espinal finally hit for the first time all year, and that Elly De La Cruz is just a wild man. That guy is pretty crazy. So big stuff there for him. Big stuff for the team. We continue on now into the Rangers, unless if you have any final thoughts on that series, Joe. Okay.
Yep. Go ahead. Right ahead.
I will preface this Rangers series by saying it was better than I thought, is what I will say. Even though it was unfortunately the Reds won 1 of 2 as we had predicted. They go into the Friday game. They lose 2-1 on just a really frustrating game. Lucas Sims giving up the big home run to not Trevor Simeon. Gosh, different sport. Marcus Simeon. Hits an absolute tank off of Lucas Sims, and I saw that, and I was like, I don't know if they're coming back from this one with the way that Texas was pitching. It was interesting because they were getting to Nate Eovaldi early, 5 walks. Really thought they had a chance because it seemed like his control was just completely all over the place. They were being really patient. Couldn't figure it out. Graham Ashcraft pitched an outstanding game, honestly. He was electric. His stuff was really strong, and he was pitching more to contact, which I think helps him immensely. Elly De La Cruz and Spencer Steer both walking twice out of those 5. I think opponents are starting to fear them at least a little bit more, take them pretty seriously, and trying to pitch around them, which is, I think, we'll talk about Spencer Steer's struggles a little bit, but that's been part of the reason why I believe he's had them. We continue on here. Reds win on Saturday, 8-4. Big game from Will Benson, massive home run, but an even bigger game from Jonathan India, who comes back after being sick and has an outstanding series, goes 4-for-4 with this one, hits his first home run of the year. He looks a lot more comfortable. Even bigger though, was Hunter Green, was damn near untouchable. 1 hit, 1 walk, 6 strikeouts. Everything he had was working. This is the peak of what we thought that Hunter Green could be. Brent Suter has his seemingly like once every like 10 or 12 games where he just gives up a bunch of runs to let the Rangers in, but this game really should have just not even been close. We head into Sunday's game. A little bit frustrating one. Reds drop, apparently a pretty easy pop-up. I was driving, sounded like, to get out of the first inning pretty much unscathed. Then we give up a home run, and Wyatt Langford's first career home run ends up being an inside the Parker after the ball takes a really bad bounce. But to be completely fair as well, Benson took a really weird angle to run at the ball or no, it wasn't Benson. Sorry, it was Fraley. Takes a really bad angle over there in right field. No idea why he did that, but cost the Reds. But they came roaring back. Like, they gave up those 4 in the first, shut everything down. Andrew Abbott was honestly electric after that. Sims, Pagan, and Wilson came in, got the job done. Justin Wilson striking out all 3 batters. The Reds really did try to make a comeback. Jonathan India went 2 for 4 again, and that's all she wrote. They couldn't pull it out. They did have a guy on in the 9th, but could not get it done. This series, to me, Joe, I will be honest with you, gave me a lot of hope. Just because I think the Rangers are actually a better team than the Phillies, even with the pretty decent amount of injuries that they have. I think Lorenzen and Dunning are actually pretty solid pitchers overall, but they were still able to handle them the way they needed to. Evaldi is what he is. He is a walk guy. He is a high strikeout guy, but he's generally consistent enough to keep a lower ERA and look pretty solid. We talked about that, I think, into the preview of this series as well. The Reds hit. I think they kept battling, which I think this series showed that they're willing to go down there to Texas, to the reigning champs, and I think give them a run for their money. There's a real world where they actually win all 3 games in this series. I think outside of like maybe 3 or 4 pitches, the Reds actually do sweep this series. So, because I think they actually played better for the most part than the Rangers did. They just had a couple unfortunate pitches, at least from my outside perspective. I was driving around a lot, so I was mostly listening to the games on the radio, so I couldn't see every single thing. But I was pretty happy for them. I really think that if they have a little less injuries, a little less, young pitcher or young hitter or young fielder mistakes, that they actually do come out of this with a 2-1 or even potentially a 3-0. It was good to see them fight well in this series.
Yeah, I think this was a good showing. It's kind of what we expected, but maybe they were a little bit more competitive than some of the games. We need the bats to show up more consistently in this series as well. I mean, that was huge. And also there was just a couple, like you said, big plays, big innings, like big moments, instead of like more like allowing big rallies to the Rangers. All 4 runs yesterday and Sunday was scored in 1 inning. The home run that Sims gave up in the first game, I mean, I thought we had him in that one, to be honest. Sure. I think it's gonna have to change roles here. A guy we weren't even sure was going to make the team, Fernando Cruz, did not pitch in this series, even though he's been our best reliever. I mean, they call him a firefighter because he just keeps on going and putting out the fires. But that's something he might have to end up being the setup guy now and take Sims' spot. Sims might have to be more of a long reliever, which might be fine. But it was kind of like, it was good to see even though they didn't have the best team out there. Well, Cruz didn't play, all the injuries still and everything, and the illness that we still have ravaging this team a week and a half, 2 weeks later, whatever. It was good to see the fight. I think that a couple of different managerial decisions or even player decisions in this series of where they were throwing pitches and everything could have changed this for the better. So it is it's disappointing that we lost the series, but it is encouraging that a couple more tweaks and we could be at a spot where we're beating the World Series champions from last year in a series on the road.
Yeah, I completely agree. It was as frustrating as the Phillies series was as hopeful as I was feeling in this series. And I'm sure a lot of people are like, well, what do you mean? They went 2-2 against the Phillies. I genuinely think that they were I'm not kidding, I think maybe 4 or 5 pitches away from sweeping this series. That's how close these games were, outside of the one that we absolutely stomped them. And yeah, I mean, that's the difference between a World Series team and a maybe playoff team, right? And those are things you have to learn and get better at. So that leads us into our discussion that we wanted to have about, is this team too streaky? Are they inconsistent? All this kind of stuff. I want to give me 2 seconds because I'm going to bring this up here. I want to bring up their schedule from April. We've had some good games here to kind of learn more. Their wins: 6-3, 9-6, 10-8, 11-1, 5-0, 11-4, 7-1, 3-0, 8-1, 8-4, right? 7-4. Like, their big wins are always big. They're putting up 6+ runs, scoring a bunch. They are not winning close games right now, like, at all. Examples here: losses to the Mets 2-3, 1-3. Let me see here. The Mariners series 1-3. That 1-5 game should have been a lot closer. Just random stuff here happened at the end of that game. 3-0 is their closest win of the month, I believe. Yeah, then they're losing, 1-2 to the Rangers, 3-4. Like, all of these things to me are starting to show a lack of consistency. I don't think there's been a hitter yet this season, and that includes Ellie and Spencer Steer, who have shown the ability to not just be streaky. And that worries you when you have a lot of players who I think are streaky at the... It would be better if they were overlapping streakies, right? Where it'd be like 2 players are really hot at one time, and then 3 are really hot at one time, and then 2 here, and especially in the lineup in particular. It's an issue because it seems like when they start to hit, they're all going to hit, and they're all going to do well. And then if nobody's hitting, then nobody's hitting. And I want to also quickly point out before you jump in here, part of that can be attributed to the hitting coach. If you don't go in with a good plan for all of your hitters and all of them are struggling, that's a problem. But you can also give him the credit where when they're doing the research, they're seeing the pitches that they think they're expecting to see, they're going out and they're smacking the ball, right? So there is that double-edged sword. I want to get your thoughts on it because it has been mind-numbingly crazy for me to try to figure out what is going on.
Yeah, I think this comes down to the approach more than anything.
Mm-hmm.
There have been some comments they made this year by David Bell that make me really wonder what we're doing here. And he's mentioned that he would rather a guy strike out looking than swing at a pitch out of the zone. If you have 2 strikes, it's always been protect the plate.
Yeah.
Like, I get that you don't want to develop bad habits, but he said that's like something we do. We want to make sure we're always swinging at good pitches. And like, in a vacuum, sure, like you want everyone to always swing at good pitches, but that's not realistic. So he said that really piqued my brain, and we've had guys strike out looking at it. I mean, it's fine at times, but just like put the ball in play and see what happens. And we also have this weirdly constructed lineup roster, which is not totally David Bell's fault. The injuries, suspensions, maybe could have signed a bigger star this offseason. But they rank tied for 18th in home runs, but they're tied for 4th last in average. You can't have an offense be successful like that. So they will have their times where they're streaky because of that. They're not hitting for average. So when they do hit a home run, those are the games that they usually score 8 runs, 7 runs, whatever it is. So to me, that's more of it than anything, is the roster isn't constructed to have a bunch of home runs hit. So if you're going to do that, try to put the ball in play and see what happens. But also, if your coach is your manager is telling you, hey, it's okay if the strikeout swinging when there's 2 strikes, I don't know if I agree with that as much as he wants people to have the good discipline all the time. I mean, I would love that, but we're not seeing the good discipline all the time. We've seen some really bad at-bats early this season from Ellie Dela Cruz. We've seen some bad at-bats lately from a whole heap of people. I know we'll talk about one here later, but that to me is probably the biggest thing. And so, yeah, it's probably the hitting coach too, but when the manager's up top saying like, that type of stuff, it just makes you wonder. Like, again, I think David Bell's done a decent job this year, and I don't think he has a full deck of cards, and I don't want to be the guy who's always ripping David Bell, but that philosophy might need to be changed with this team, especially when you have so much speed on this team too, and that putting the ball in play and stealing bases is a way bigger asset to me than making sure you always swing at the right pitch when they're not already doing that right now. So that's how I took it.
Well, and I will say that too. I guess I missed that quote, but like, they are becoming a 3 true outcome kind of team if that's the mindset that they want to have. They're one of the highest walk teams in baseball. They're actually 6th. They're literally 1 walk away from being in the top 5. but they're also striking out some of the most in baseball as well. They are currently fourth in strikeouts, right? So this team has too much speed. And like, also, I want to say this too. You have a bunch of young guys. You don't want to, like, we don't want to see another Jay Bruce, where Jay Bruce went from being truly, like, I think a very solid hitter to being almost only power, right? Joe and I talked about this. He's probably much better now than what we considered back then. Honestly, in terms of like even his average and stuff is actually kind of high for most places now. But the inconsistency for me of the messaging for that is not good. Like, this team is not, like you said, built for home runs. Like, they're still, I believe, leading the league in stolen bases. Yeah, they're still up by 4. So it's like they are walking a lot, and they're using that to their advantage, I think, to get these stolen bases and get those. And I think that that's great. I'm glad. I love seeing some of the approaches of patience. Now they have to take that to the next level of being, okay, foul a pitch off, right? Like, learn from Joey Votto, right? If you don't like the pitch, that's fine. You don't have to roll over on it. You can literally just, hopefully learn to have the back control. You'll never have it like Votto did, but learn the back control enough to be able to just flip a pitch back into the, into the foul ground, right? Okay, I know I'm not doing anything with this pitch. It's going over into left field line, right? Or right field line, or, behind, whatever. Like, just try to find a way to stay alive until they make a mistake pitch. And I think that we've seen some of those at bats, but they feel very rare to me. It feels like it's either good night, or they're getting a walk, or they're getting a hit on the first 2 pitches. And that's great, but I wonder, because they have 3 new hitting coaches this year, I believe. Joel McKeithen, Terry Bradshaw, and Tim Lamonte are their new... Because I've been literally thinking to myself, like, who's their hitting coach? Nobody's been talking about it for a while. These are their new guys. I'm wondering if it's just taking them time to kind of adjust and kind of integrate their system. I really hope that Joel McKeithen is not sitting there telling them that they want to just swing for power all the time. Because if he's doing that, then he needs to be gone. Like, now, it needs to be average. This team should always be trying to hit for average. They have enough raw power to where they can run into it on their own. I will be really upset if we end up continuing throughout this season to hear that they're trying to hit for power instead of trying to hit for average. Because the one thing I will say is, while I understand that power puts up runs, you will also put up a ton of runs, especially in today's day and age, especially in today's baseball game, where if you're making the pitcher have to work every inning and you're getting the starting pitcher out in 4 innings, maybe 5 innings, instead of letting them go 7, that's going to be because you're consistently getting hits, you're consistently getting on base, you're consistently putting pressure on them, and you're like, I mean, look at the way that pitchers react when Elly De La Cruz is on. They cannot find the strike zone because they know he's running and there's nothing they can do about it. So I want to see them maybe even adapt a different approach, because the fact that people like Will Benson and Encarnacion Strand and Elly De La Cruz are just striking out and at such an absurd rate, Elly a little less so recently, makes me very concerned.
Yeah, for me, that's the biggest thing, is they have to change the approach from power or strikeout. Now, we know that batting for contact and average is at a premium in today's game. It just doesn't happen as much as it used to, and a lot of that has to do with sticky stuff on the ball and the way they're manufacturing the baseballs to be hit further, but also to have a lot of spin rate on them. But out of the top 11 teams in average, there's only 2 on there with losing records, and both of those teams, I think, were thought to be decent teams. I mean, the Astros and the Padres are the top 11 teams with an average that is in the top 11, but also losing records. So to me, that means that, like, we need to find those guys who are creating contact, because the proof is right there in the pudding. And our pitching, I think, has also been inconsistent. But I feel like there's so many guys where I sit there and say, man, if we scored 5 runs in this game, or even 4 runs in this game, like, this is a different ball game, and the pitchers don't have that run support all the time. So to me, that's kind of what's happening, is like, when you have games where you score 7, but then a lot of games where you score 0 or 1, it's tough for the pitchers to kind of go out there and stay focused and stay in the game too. So I'm I'm very big on hitting for average. I always think that's the best thing. I'm very big on Moneyball. Getting on base is very, very important, especially with a team that is equipped with the amount of speed that this team has. And I just think it's like the Reds are trying to find what their approach is for an era of baseball where it's all about power.
Mm-hmm.
But the teams who are winning are hitting average, and they're like trying to mesh it together with a roster that is not the best built considering the injuries and sicknesses and everything else too. So I do think some of it naturally will be helped by guys getting healthy, from the sickness, from guys coming back from injury, from giving guys more at bats against, like because of the sickness that Jake Fraley got a couple more at bats against left-handed pitchers. He's still hitting the ball very well right now. He doesn't qualify for any of the awards right now because he doesn't have as many bats as you need, but he's the top average on the team if you don't take that into consideration. So that to me is kind of the things I'm looking at for the next couple of weeks here. Can we get guys to put balls in place? Can we get some of our fast guys to lay down some bunts? And it's tough because I do think that Ellie has been carrying this team for the last couple of weeks now because Steer's been in a slump. And of the guys who do qualify for batting average and all the league leaders, Ellie is number 1 at 285 and Spencer Steer is 253. There's 8 teams in the league who have a 253 average or better as teams. That streak needs to stop, and we need to start putting the ball in play. And I think when we do that, it would also help out the pitching staff as well. And you might say, oh, well, yeah, they score more runs. But I think mentally it might help them out as well to kind of stay focused in the games, because there's times where they have one bad inning and it's like, give up 2 runs in an inning and the game's like over. And it's just, that's not the way it should be with this team. So that's how I take it.
No, I completely agree with you. I do think, and we'll get into this here in our fourth topic of our middle segment here. There's, I think, one player that's coming back that could substantially help this team. And I think, Marte, we're getting closer and closer to Noelvi Marte coming back. And he is a pretty solid bat to ball guy. He's not as fast as our other young guys, but he is pretty solid. And then near the end of the year, I know McLean still strikes out a pretty decent amount, but he also still puts the ball in play a pretty good amount too. So, and I anticipated his strikeouts to go down pretty markedly this year based on what I saw last year. So, we're missing, I think, a couple really still big key guys who it makes me excited still about this offense once they come back, because if people like Jonathan India and Tyler Stevenson are truly ending up being like some of our worst hitters on the team, then we are in the starting lineup on a consistent basis, then we are in a really, really good spot. So we try to keep that in mind when we're talking about this stuff. We just have to be, I think, realistic about where they're at right now. And, to be completely clear, this team could be in a much worse spot, I think, than they currently are. I think you would agree with that as well. 15-13, 2 games over 500 right now. Sign me up, baby. Sign me up. All right, we head into our next one. I wanted to talk about the young pitchers learning how to negate the big inning. And you, I think, kind of played into that where you're talking about with the hitters. One of the things I've been noticing about literally all of our pitchers is they have one bad inning, and then otherwise they are absolutely amazing throughout the rest of the game. Whether it's Ashcraft, Abbott, Lodolo, Hunter Green, they will give up 3 or 4 in one inning, and then they're awesome throughout the rest of the game. I think Abbott and Green and Ashcraft specifically have been this way for me. They're not consistently getting hit. They just seemingly lose focus, and I want to figure out what is Derek Johnson doing to alleviate that, because to me, that's a concentration thing more than anything, right? That's a maturity thing. I know that will come with time. I know everybody's pushing for Green and Ashcraft, I think specifically, to make bigger moves forward, make bigger jumps forward. But again, like I said last week, they are just hitting their 50th starts in Major League Baseball. These, at least Hunter Green for sure, maybe Ashcraft, these are going to be guys who are going to have 300 potentially starts in their career, plus probably more than that, to be honest with you. Hunter Green specifically, I think, has a very good chance to have 400 or 500 starts in his career very easily, right? We're not even potentially a 10th of the way through their career. I want to give them a true chance to do what they need to do. That being said, I think it is especially important for Derek Johnson to find a way. Send out Tyler Stevenson. Go out for one of your mound visits when it looks like the inning's getting big. Don't do it after. That's what's been driving me nuts, is they're doing it once it's gotten completely out of control and off the rails. When you start to see the big inning coming, go out and get their focus back. Either that, or you need to start training these young guys better to how do you mitigate the big innings. One of the things that I remember really watching with Aaron Harang, I will give you a really big callback, is when he was really young in his career, he had these kinds of innings. His were a lot worse than Hunter Green's and like Abbott's, though. He would give up like 6 runs in an inning and then go out and still somehow get 7 innings almost every single time. That dude was just, I loved watching Aaron Harang pitch for the most part. That being said, once he learned how to mitigate those big innings and keep it to maybe 2 runs in that inning instead of 5, he started to, I think, become a much better pitcher until Dusty Baker ruined his arm in a game in San Diego. But again, that's a whole other time. My point is that it comes with maturity, but I am concerned, Joe, that we are seeing such big innings and nothing is seemingly changing in those innings. Like, they still seem like they're attacking hitters the same way. It doesn't feel like anybody's going out there to try to help them. It doesn't feel like they are finding a way to refocus themselves. I don't know if maybe I'm just overblowing this, but I'm curious as to what your thoughts are on my mini monologue there.
No, it's definitely true. I think it stems from leaving pitches out over the plate too much. This is a pitching staff that hasn't walked too many batters this year, which is good. I mean, I think looking right now, Abbott has 11, Hunter Green has 12, Graham Ashcraft has 7 walks, and Nick Lodolo has 4, which are limited starts, but still. That's where it stems from for me. It's good to want to throw strikes, but sometimes you can walk a big hitter and if first base is open, do it. And sometimes it'll burn you, but a lot of times if you can avoid one of the big hitters, you can avoid some big innings. And I think that's what it comes down to, is they need to be able to locate their pitches inside the zone better. And then sometimes if they can't locate it inside the zone, miss to the outside of the zone rather than missing inside on the zone and having the guy be able to turn on the ball and get a big hit. So for me, that's where it stems from. But again, I'll say I do think the run support is getting to them. If you look at, we talked a little bit about it last week, Rob. You look at the ERAs for their starting pitchers now. I mean, Lodolo 2.12. Yeah, hasn't really played that much, so we'll see how it goes going through the future. Andrew Abbott 3.27, pretty solid, you know.
Yep.
Hunter Green 3.63, big week this week. Graham Ashcraft 4.4. As you mentioned, Rob, if you have a 4.4 out of your 5th starter, it's not the worst thing in today's baseball. You'd like to get that closer to 4. But those are our 4 starters who's pitched most of the starts this year. Nick Martinez is at 5.48, but he also has the time in the bullpen, so we don't have to worry about that.
Yeah.
But that's, to me, that's good. And if it's just coming from one of those innings, I think that's an easy fix of saying, hey, you can miss this one off the plate. You can not, you can't miss over the plate when Bryce Harper or Kyle Schwarber are up. So that's where I think the growth is going to come. And we see all these. I guess to kind of parlay it into the question about Hunter Green, part of the consistency is not giving up those big innings, right? Mm-hmm. But he's had 2 bad games this year. One where he gave up 6 runs to the Brewers, and then one where he gave up 4 runs. But otherwise, he's only given up a max of 2 runs.
Yeah.
So I think the run support needs to help. I think a lot of people on Twitter are saying, like, hey, don't give up on Hunter Green yet. I think 2 starts ago they were saying that because the ERA was inflated. And I get it because it's early in the season, but he wasn't getting run support. So I think fixing the streaky offense does help these guys to kind of bring everything together, tie a knot on it. But that is the thing I'm noticing the most is let's pitch a little bit out of the zone if we're going to miss. And you're right, it does come with more time and more starts. And I do think all 4 of our young guys, I'm really impressed right now. If this is what they need to clean up, I think that's an easy fix mentally, or I should say in practice, or in theory, it's a good fix. And then in practice, that'll be where it comes down to. So it's definitely a good point on your part to bring it up. And I'm still very impressed with the young pitchers.
I'm really glad you bring that up because I was going to kind of point out real quickly as well. I think that this pitching staff is like what I was hoping they would be last year. They have truly the opportunity to be elite. Like what you're seeing with the Mariners right now, which again, it seems like we run into teams kind of at the wrong time. The Mariners and the Mets very much specifically right now, to be honest with you. They both went on huge streaks. If you haven't seen, the Mariners starting pitching has been elite 3 times through the order or through the rotation, which is insane. I think this team has that kind of opportunity right now. I think Hunter Green is very much the strikeout guy. I think Lodolo is the same way. Lodolo has 2 less starts, and he's only 6 and 7 strikeouts behind Andrew Abbott and Ashcraft right now. He has been pretty damn good, to say the least. Their batting averages against are really low. Their whips are really low, like you said. Their walks are low. I didn't bring this topic up because I was trying to be overly critical of them. It was more of like, I feel like if they clean this up, right? If they can truly stem that from 4 runs to 2 runs, I have a very weird feeling that these 4 guys are going to be like, we'll be looking back at this season and we'll be like, this is one of the best young rotations the Reds have literally ever, I'm talking ever, have had. And that's kind of crazy to me because they are all young. They're all like under 26, I want to say. And they're all locked up for a really long time. That 5th spot, that Rhett Lauder spot, is looking real nice right now. I'll be honest with you, potentially in the future. You know, I maybe they don't end up needing another guy. You know, we've talked about that a lot. Maybe Montas really is going to be a 1 year kind of guy, but they do need to figure out that 5th spot. If Montas keeps struggling for some reason, if Nick Martinez, I really don't love him starting, honestly, at this point. I'm starting to see that he is very much a guy who needs to probably stay in the bullpen, in my opinion. But, you know, that is what that is. But that 5th spot in the order is going to be, in the rotation, is going to be really, really interesting to see. And I'm really confident that if these 4 young Red starters can figure out how to get out of the bad inning, they have a very, very good chance of being a top, at least maybe 10 or 8 rotation in baseball. So very excited about that. Do you have any last thoughts before I move us on here?
No, I just think I think it's starting to come together for the pitching staff, the starters that we have, and I think when we see this team start to put everything together at the same time and have guys not be sick, not be injured, I think
Yeah.
we're going to be pretty happy with the end result if the approach at the plate changes, which we just talked about. So
Yeah, and I think it will. I think it will. All right, well then let's move on here. Jeimer Candelario. Look, they brought him in to kind of be that guy in the, I guess we'll call it semi-middle of the order. We expected him to be, I think, a lot better than this so far. He is striking out as well. I didn't bring him up because he's not a young guy, but he is striking out at a pretty absurd rate right now as well. Anything kind of above 30% right now, in my opinion, is bad. I think 25% is closer to league average, and that's fine with me. But he is striking out almost half of his at-bats right now, a little under half of his at-bats. He and Will Benson specifically are striking out almost about half of their at-bats, which is really disappointing to say the least. And that's just not good enough. They signed him to this big contract. He's batting 159 right now, which is by far the lowest on the team outside of Bubba Thompson, who's not really playing very much, to be honest with you. I think he's 2 for 18. So, 13 hits in his first 82 at-bats, official at-bats, 5 doubles, a triple, 2 home runs, 8 RBIs, 10 walks, 34 strikeouts. Just really not good. I'm a little concerned personally, and I know this was a topic that you particularly wanted to discuss. I will just say this. I'm almost wondering if the pressure is getting to him right now. I think that that's the issue, is they hyped him up to be this guy that I don't think that he is. I think you and I both said that at the beginning of the year. He is a solid hitter. The Reds needed a solid veteran hitter, and he has been almost the exact opposite of that since he has come to Cincinnati. And I'm a little bit worried. To be clear to every single person out there, I don't care about the money they gave to him. I really don't. They have so much payroll. It really doesn't matter that they overpaid for him. Like, truly, that's not a huge concern of mine. What I'm more concerned by is what they needed him to be, which is not a superstar, maybe not even a star, but just a solid guy. And he's not being that right now. That's where I'm at with it, Joe. I know you're going to probably disagree with me wholeheartedly on the money thing. I don't know, but I'm interested. Where are you at with this?
I mentioned this in our preview that he was our big signing, right? Like
Yep.
Montas, even though he had some success in the past, it was like a very much a risky, like, hey, he's injured, he might be not be the same, and he's injured right now, and we're gonna find that out, right? But there's a lot of money attached to him too. But Candy was the guy we signed to be the icing on top of all these young prospects, to be the guy who hit the ball. I didn't like it then. I said I give him a B because they tried it, right? They tried something. I didn't like it because he was his career 243 hitter. And again, we're at the same thing with this lineup. We're not built for power. And I thought that he'd have more home runs this year. I thought that he'd be able to hit a lot of doubles in our ballpark. And it hasn't come to fruition. So I don't mind that they tried to sign someone. I'm starting to question the evaluating tools of what we're doing when we're starting to sign free agents from other teams, because our scouting is great. We can draft well. We can go find international free agents well. But we bring guys in the last 10, 15 years. And every time we bring someone who's really, really good in as a hitter, it always seems like their value goes down. And it seems like maybe it's just third base spot too at some different points too, with Mike Moustakas and not Scott Rowland. Scott Rowland was great. Scott Rowland was the last one that was actually good. But Mike Moustakas as being one that never really panned out. Like, how are we evaluating these guys? Are they past their prime? Are we tracking the exit velocity? What are we doing here? And that's what bothers me. Is I think we had a chance to go get someone who we knew we can rely on to hit. And throughout his whole career, he's not a guy you could have ever relied on to be like, hey, you're going to hit 265 this year. He's done it before. He's hit 271 one year. He's had some decent years. But every year it changes with him. So yeah. I think he's just a streaky hitter year in and year out. And that doesn't bode well for this team. So I don't mind that they paid him money. At this point, he is overpaid. I don't know if the pressure's getting to him, but I do know that just like some of the other hitters we talked about, the approach at the plate is pretty bad right now. And his swing looks pretty ugly too. I mean, he's had some couple nice swings this year, but for the most part, it's not been great. So he needs to play better. And I think I've seen a lot of hate on the timeline, on Twitter timeline, and even people I talk to, for guys like Santiago Espinal, who I've liked as a backup. He's not hitting that well either. He's 190. But it's different when you're a backup getting paid way less than a starter. Or guys, shitting on Luke Maile. Like, he's a backup catcher. He's hitting 189. It's not the end of the world. If he's their worst hitter in the lineup one day, it's not the end of the world. But a guy you're paying to be, I guess they were paying him to be a cleanup hitter because that's what they thought he was going to be, which again is a bad strategy on their part. You need more out of it. So instead of sitting here and shitting on the end of the bench guys, which is the easiest thing to do, Bubba Thompson, like, Bubba Thompson just runs. He runs. He plays defense and he runs. That's all. It's fine. He could be the 26 guy. The anger needs to be shifted towards Candy, and the criticism needs to be shifted towards him as well, because if he's the one getting paid, he's the one getting all these at-bats, he's the one we need to come through, especially in this time where we don't have everyone. So that's the only thing I would say is, like, I've been a little bit frustrated with some of the takes I've seen of, like, let's go shit on Espinal. Let's go, Fairchild's been struggling lately. Let's go shit on those guys. If they give you anything, it is a bonus. Candelario needs to give you everything and more for what you paid him. So that's what I want to see. Let's see if his streakiness can come through in these next couple of weeks here, because with this schedule coming up, Rob, we desperately need him to start hitting the ball.
He has to. He just genuinely has to hit the ball. And I think he will. I personally think it's pressure right now. I think that's why they've moved him down in the order. I think, it's a new environment for him. It takes time, I'm sure, maybe for him to adapt. I only wanted him, if he literally hits 260 this year and can hit doubles and be in scoring position and hit guys in when there are guys on base. I don't care if he only drives in 80 runs, whatever. That's good enough for me right now with where this team is going to be. But he is currently, literally, he has less RBIs right now than Espinal. And pretty much Nick Martini has almost double. India, even though he's been batting leadoff, has almost as many RBIs as he does. Like, it's just unacceptable to me for where he's at. And they're going to have to figure it out. Here's the kicker though. If he doesn't work out, it doesn't matter. They have guys who will just take his position. Like, when Noelvi Marte comes back and Matt McClain comes back, and that infield is very, very abundant with talent, whose job is going to be gone? It'll be his, and they will just cut him, and he'll he won't get to see that money from the contract, over these next couple years. Like I will say that. So it's not the way that maybe we would have liked, but he has to step up not only for himself, but for the team. And it needs to happen soon because it's really bad. There's no world where this guy should be batting under 200. None. That is just completely unacceptable, at least in my mind. And the strikeouts still have to go down. I've had a couple people even text me. His approach at the plate is probably the second worst. I think Benson's might be worse, even though I know he's walking, literally one more walk than him. But like, those two have to have better approaches. I mean, it's awful. Watching them bat is almost like it puts like a pit in my stomach. I hate it. Like, I really do. I see him go up to bat, and I've been saying this since the beginning. I don't know why his swing looks so much worse than last year's. Last year's swing wasn't nearly this bad. It feels like he's guessing on every pitch and has no idea what is coming right now and is not swinging with any sort of confidence whatsoever. It's pretty bad. It's pretty bad. So I'm not going to just sit here and shit on him. Like, we also are not encouraging you to go out on social media and crush this guy. Like, we are not those kind. There are no witch hunts from us. That being said, if you want to express your frustration, obviously on social medias without adding the guy, feel free, go ham. But that's on him to look up. But we're not telling you to go and just shit on any of our guys in that way.
No, I sometimes get mad with like the misplaced criticism of some of these other guys, and I'm like, these guys are backups, or like some of them like are young. Like, this is kind of like I said, he was signed to be our veteran hitter. We talked about how a lack of a veteran presence in the clubhouse could be a factor, and even Nick Martini's like old, but like he's not experienced in the Major League Baseball, so. That's why I wanted Votto back in a different way of just being like able to be a guy who can help, even though his average hasn't been the greatest over the last couple of years. This is like his time to shine was now when we're having all these bad plate approaches. We have no one hitting the ball well besides arguably Ellie. This is his time to just be that stable force in the lineup who's like, hey, man, I got this. I'll hit. As you said, Rob, coming into the season, I think it was fair to say he could have hit 250. Mm-hmm. I don't know if he can get back up there. He probably can, but he has to go on an absolute tear. But like, I don't know if it's reasonable to expect that. But he needs to start getting good at bats and putting the ball in play and helping these young guys out, because you're right. Like, we will replace him, but it might be at the expense of this season where Marte comes back. He plays for the last couple games, last 80 games of the season or whatever, and he's fine. But if he doesn't start hitting the ball, at that point, we'll be so far out of the race that it's probably not going to look good. So I'm with you. He can be replaced for the long term, but this season, if the Reds want to be good, they're going to need him to step up, or they're going to need everyone else who has not been stepping up to play a little bit better too, which, might be a little bit more unreasonable than just one guy playing a little bit better.
Would you have expected that the pitching would be the thing keeping us afloat this season? I can't tell you that I did.
No, I mean, I thought that the pitching would be like they are streaky, but I thought they'd be more up and down than they have been, and they've been good in that regard, the starting pitching. And the bullpen guys, obviously we have some injuries. We have some guys who aren't working out right now. But we also found a star in Fernando Cruz. I mentioned again, his splitter is amazing. So the pitching is just it's solid. Mm-hmm. And the hitting just needs to be solid too. This team can do some real damage. But Rob, we're in the playoffs, and the season ended today. We just have to. The thing that concerns me is this tough schedule coming up, and if these guys don't turn it around, how much of a mental fog do you get in if you don't start seeing some results after? As you said, we're about a month into the season now. This is when stats start to matter more, and that's what makes it look worse. Like, if this was 2 weeks in, I'd be like, okay, this kind of stinks, but it's whatever. But now it's getting a little bit worse.
I completely agree. We'll move on. We don't generally do too much injury stuff, but I did look, and there was promising news on somebody who we are both expecting to be able to come back and help the Reds, I think, substantially, potentially, which I think maybe takes away from the question I'm about to ask. But TJ Friedl will be on a rehab assignment this Thursday, May 2nd. Pretty big deal. Is he enough, or should the Reds really start looking at bringing up Mike Ford, PJ Higgins, or Connor Capel? Look, I will tell you before I say this, Mike Ford is the only one of those three hitters I genuinely think has enough knowledge and experience to be good at the major league level. But Higgins and Capel have both been hitting pretty well. Capel's younger. He's only 26. Higgins is 30. We've seen PJ Higgins up here before. He's not been great. But sometimes an injection into the lineup can be good wherever it comes from, right? Generally as well, a hitter's rehab assignment is not as long as anybody else's, as like a pitcher specifically. I had heard that he had been hitting for the last couple weeks. He's been swinging. There's a very real chance that we have TJ Friedl back. I think, let me see, what's the schedule? There's a very real chance that TJ Friedl could be back maybe while we're on our West Coast trip, either in San Francisco, Arizona, or in LA. I will tell you that that makes me feel a lot better about this month if we can get him back sometime in the next 10 to 12 days. Where are you at with this? Where are you at with those guys who are hitting well in Louisville? And what are you thinking with the return of TJ Friedl, hopefully, as long as there are no setbacks, being imminent?
It'll help a lot more than people give it credit for. The approach still needs to change, like we talked about, for a lot of people. But having a guy who, and honestly, can hit left-handed pitching too, is going to be good because we've struggled against some lefties before. But getting him in the lineup really helps you, I think, move guys around differently. If you put him at the top spot where he hit last year, you can put Ellie second. You can put Steer third, and all three of those guys should feel pretty secure with the guys batting in front of them. Of like, hey, we might get some good pitches because you don't want to pitch to the next guy.
Yeah.
And you can build a lineup after that, and you keep on moving guys down after that who aren't performing. Like Candy's already moved down a little bit, but if you want to move him to the 9 spot to take even more pressure off, go for it. To me, I think it makes a exponential increase to this lineup, assuming he hits like he did. And I think that's the answer to a lot of problems. It will not solve everything, but in terms of like, should we just wait for Friedl or bring a guy up? I would rather just wait for Friedl. The guys who are in AAA, I don't think are the best hitters. Mike Ford can add some pop, but just want some guys who hit for contact, man. That's all I want. So I mean, we'll see if we can get that with Friedl. So
as long as Mike Ford has been a Cincinnati Red, he has been hitting near 300. I will say that.
Yeah.
He is hitting the absolute piss out of the ball right now. Like really and truly.
Right.
And like for more than just like he is potentially hitting the ball as well as he has in his entire career. If you look at it, like he's never hit for this kind of average. So I'm not trying to push for him, but I will say like if specifically people like Nick Martini and stuff continue to struggle, Bubba Thompson's there for defense and for running. Now, Nick Martini is there to be a left-handed batter that can hit right-handed pitching. Mike Ford can potentially do the same thing without the speed. Not saying that I would 100% make that move, but I would definitely consider it at this point, to be completely honest with you. Because if he is seeing the ball this well, and we just saw it with Jackson Holiday, which you and I are sadly not going to see him most likely when he is in Cincinnati, which is a bit of a disappointment. But he came up and I think had like 1 or 2 hits and like 30 at bats and struck out like 16 times or something crazy like that, right? Like the jump between AAA and the major leagues is very substantial. So I'm not coming out here saying Mike Ford's going to come in and hit 300. Okay. Want to be very clear on that. But does he add something that we're not getting right now out of some of these other guys? And I think that is a question that is worth being asked at right now. I think even potentially the next injury that happens, I wouldn't be surprised to see Connor Capel potentially get the call up to fill something in as well. Can he just be a change of pace guy? Neither of these guys are going to save them in terms of everyday starter guys. But right now, nobody has been hitting pretty consistently. It's basically just been Ellie. And while I know that we don't want to necessarily give away young guy at bats for other guys, if we're also trying to win right now, sometimes you got to go with a hot hand. And it may be a player that is exponentially worse, specifically in the potential department, than some of these other guys. But I just want to throw it out there. I'm not saying we should, to be very clear. I want to have that discussion. That's all. I think for now they're fine. But if we're getting down into this and we're like 2-8 over our last 10 games and absolutely nobody's hitting, and these 3 guys are hitting 280 plus down there in AAA, I'm sorry. Like, then I may be calling for it. In 2 weeks, I may be like, guys, look, thank God we're getting TJ Friedel back, but some of these other dudes, they just aren't hitting it all right now. Sorry. Got to call somebody up that can hit.
Right. I mean, if you want to call Mike Ford up for Nick Martini, like that's fine. I
Yeah.
think that's not the worst move. Try to shake things up and try to see if you can catch lightning in a bottle somehow. My expectation is there might be a big hit or two, and then after that point, in like a week after you bring him up, you're back in the same spot that you
You're not
were
wrong.
before because
You're
Mike
not
Ford
wrong, but
is that guy. So if you, I'm not saying that like again, like if you want to bring him up and try it, that's cool because we'll try to get something different. But I think the expectation when you do bring him up is that things likely won't change if it does happen. But that's again,
see,
we'll have to see how it works
know.
if they do it.
I don't know. I don't know if that would not be my expectation. My expectation would be that maybe he hits for like a week or two and then literally just getting TJ Friedel back gets the lineup back in order. And then you can do whatever you want. I'm just saying, think about it this way. If those 1 or 2 big hits equals 2 more wins during this really tough stretch, is that worth it based on what we've been seeing with other guys? That's my only point.
Right. No, again, I just
Yeah.
I don't think we're disagreeing here. I think the expectations aren't like for you. I don't think the expectations are Mike Ford's going to hit 300 at major league level. He's not even going to hit 250.
No.
Probably not even going to hit 230. And then you get into the same conversation and are we streaky and everything else. And you're right, the Friedel thing on top of it might help. But if we're going to say Friedel coming back is going to help maybe Mike Ford, maybe it would help guys who are already on the roster. And the only thing I can say is I'd say you can bring up Mike Ford for Bubba Thompson or Martini. I would think Martini would be more of the 1-for-1 swap from AAA to MLB.
Yeah.
But again, just you're hoping to find lightning in the bottle, just like we got with Martini on opening day. So
exactly.
That's what I think you're trying to do.
Yeah, exactly. That's the only reason I bring it up. And again, to be very clear, I don't expect that to happen. It was just more of I was like, I haven't looked at AAA. I want to see what's happening down there, and these guys were all hitting pretty well. So good for them. We head into now this is our rough stretch. I want to reiterate real quickly the teams that we are about to play over the next 30 or so odd days. Padres in San Diego, Orioles at home, D-backs at home, Giants in San Francisco, D-backs on the road, LA in LA, Dodgers specifically, not the Angels, Padres at home, Dodgers at home. Look, the NL West is probably one of the best divisions in baseball, if not the best division in baseball, even if teams like the Padres don't necessarily have a winning record, or maybe you're not as afraid of the Giants, or maybe the Diamondbacks aren't playing like they did that led them up to the World Series. I don't really care what you're trying to say. All of these teams have solid lineups with generally good starting pitching and decent relieving. This is going to be the hardest stretch of baseball for the Reds. I think Joe and I, if they even sniff 15-15 during a 30-game stretch like this, I literally think we may end up, I don't know, doing something really stupid in celebration. I don't know what else I'm going to say. I'm not going to promise anything right now, but you know what I mean. We will be very excited because this is a brutal stretch. This would be a brutal stretch for literally any of the teams that we even just mentioned, to be clear. Right? Like not just us, like any team in baseball having to do this is going to be tough. And we're going to see the mental resolve of this team. We just got to hope that they can get as close to 500 as possible. With that being said, we start off 3 games at the Padres, which again, by the way, I really don't like our schedule makers right now, but whatever. Because this just feels like a really weird half West Coast trip, but whatever. 3 games in San Diego. Then we do get a break on Thursday to fly home against the Orioles. I think that Thursday is going to be a godsend for our players. Padres lining up to be Nick Lodolo versus Waldron, Martinez versus, I think it's going to end up being Yu Darvish. I think that 30th is the end of his IL stint. He should be coming off of it right then. Otherwise, it's going to be a bullpen day for them, or they'll bring back up Randy Vasquez to pitch for them. And then you got Graham Ashcraft versus Joe Musgrove. Their closer, Robert Suarez, is 9 for 9 in saves. Their lineup, generally speaking, Bogarts, at second base, Tatis Jr. in right field, Cronenworth at first base, Machado, DH, he's coming back from an injury, so he's been playing a little bit more third since then. Kim at shortstop. Campusano at catcher. Aguai, is it Agu? I don't know how to say his name. Rosario at third base. Jackson Merrill in center field, and Jerkson Profar in left field. Then you got backups of Tyler Wade, Graham Pauley, Jose Azocar, and Kyle Higashioka. Yeah, I just had to say it without looking at it. So, quick notes from me on this. Starting pitching has actually not been very good for them, especially compared to most people. But their relief pitching has been really good. So this is going to be maybe a very different type of series than what we're used to, where it's like, hey, let's get these starting pitchers out of the game and hope that we can get to the bullpen. Jerkson Profar has actually had an unbelievable start to the season. They've even been batting him third at different points so far this year. That's been interesting. And we are very lucky to be dodging Dylan Cease, as he has been very good for them to start the season. Joe, where are you at with this team? What are your thoughts against the Padres?
Yeah, this is, as you mentioned, we're getting him at a good time.
Mm-hmm.
No Dylan Cease. We're potentially not going to have to play Yu Darvish. We'll see how that goes. He's currently on the injured list. We'll see if he comes back. But this is a team that is built to win for the most part. They got rid of Juan Soto this offseason. Just a lot of big contracts on this team and a lot of good players, too. I specifically am watching this series to see... I think our left-handed pitchers, when they go into the game, especially because we have Lodolo starting game one, can they get these righties out? There's a lot of good right-handed hitters here, or guys who can switch hit as well. So, mostly right-handed hitters. You look at some of the big names. I mean, that's what I'm looking for here. So you would think like, hey, Lodolo is pitching well. Can he get the job done here? If we bring a lefty reliever into the game, since Abbott's not projected to pitch in the series, that's my kind of key to the series here, is just having those lefties get guys out.
Yeah, I was going to say that as well. I think actually we were catching them maybe at the exact perfect time. I don't know if we'll get this lucky again the next time around with them, but the fact that we're looking at Waldron, a potential bullpen day, or a Yu Darvish coming off of an injury, and Joe Musgrove, who has really struggled so far this season, I actually think, weirdly, starting pitching wise, we may have an advantage in the Lodolo and Ashcraft games, which is kind of cool to say. Their lineup does scare me, but generally speaking, they have holes in their lineup. Campusano's hitting well this year. Profar's been hitting well this year, but you can never discount guys like Xavier Bogaerts, obviously Tatis Jr., Machado, Cronenworth, and Kim. They can all really hit well. But I don't think their bench is all that great either. Especially I was actually going to say, I think their lefties really outside of Cronenworth are kind of bad. So it's going to truly just be up to the righties to, really contain their right-handed hitters. I think Martinez and Ashcraft specifically are going to have to really go deep in some of these games potentially. I think Fernando Cruz is going to play a really big role against this team in big situations against, the Tatises and the Machados, and he's going to have to find a way to get through Cronenworth during that time period as well. But I will be honest with you, when I was doing more research on this team, I actually think this is one of the easier teams that we're going to face over the next couple weeks, to be honest with you. I know their lineup's kind of scary, but considering the pitching matchups that we have, I'm actually feeling pretty good, Joe. I'm going to go with a 2-1 in this series. I can't explain why exactly, but I just have this feeling that their pitching is just not going to be very good. And I still stick by the belief that the Reds really struggle with strong pitching more than anything right now, at least the lineup wise. I feel like when we face pretty average guys or guys that just aren't throwing as well as they have in the past, the Reds do seem to take a pretty decent amount of advantage of it. I think even in the Rangers and Phillies series specifically, we saw them, I think, kind of beat up on some of the guys who are either, like Lorenzen, who didn't have much of a spring training, or, the Christopher Sanchez's of the world who, have been hot, but their career record would show you that they're not necessarily a great pitcher. I think with Waldron, I think with a potential either slightly injured or a bullpen day from the Padres on Tuesday, and then the Musgrove game, because he has again been roughed up quite a bit so far this season. I don't think that that'll continue. At some point he'll figure it out, but I feel like if they get to the Padres early, weirdly enough, and they don't allow for Robert Suarez to come in and like shut down a game. I really think they can go out to San Diego and win 2 of 3 here.
I'm going 1-2. I really do think we struggle against good teams, and this is a good team on paper, even though they haven't played up to that as well. They're 14-17 right now.
Okay.
Their worst qualified hitter is Xander Bogaerts, and he's hitting 213. And I just want to live in that world where your worst hitter is 213. Everyone else is hitting the ball pretty decently.
Mm-hmm.
There's too many batters to dodge, and like you said, Rob, there's gonna be big innings where Manny Machado's up, and we got to pitch around him. Can we do that? Jurickson Profar, who, again, like you said, having a really good season. Can you pitch around him? And then if you do pitch around those guys, do you then Fernando Tatis is up, and then you got to figure this all out. So I'm going 1-2. I think if maybe our rotation lined up a little differently, I could be swayed to be if some more of our better right-handed pitchers were going in this one. But we have Green going against Baltimore, and I don't trust Ashcraft or Martinez enough to really help us get those wins against a team like this. So Odolo might struggle, and then you have those guys next. I guess that's my point is I think their bats will come through more given the pitchers they're facing as well.
Okay, I guess this will be one of the few times that we do disagree. It's only by one game, though, so we've seen for most of these series, it literally is just a couple pitches for the Reds, one way or the other, so we will have to see. They do get that off day, like I said, on Thursday. We head into Baltimore afterwards. Right now, I have it as Hunter Green versus Albert Suarez on Friday. Then Andrew Abbott versus Grayson Rodriguez on Saturday, and Nick Lodolo versus Dean Kramer. We are going to be missing old friend Corbin Burns. Very thankfully about that because he has pitched pretty well so far this season. There was a chance I thought he was going to start on Sunday, but the way it lined up, we are going to be missing him by 1 day, which is kind of nice, even though I do specifically like Rodriguez and Dean Kramer. Their closer is normally Craig Kimbrell, but last night, apparently he aggravated something in his back in his day-to-day. I think Yanier Cano, I don't know, likely to fill in for that. Their lineup, oh boy, this is a lineup. Let me tell you. Gunnar Henderson at shortstop, Adley Rutschman at catcher, Ryan O'Hearn DHing or first base, Anthony Santander, I think in right field, I put right-handed hitter for some reason, but I'm pretty sure right field. Ryan Mountcastle in first base, Cedric Mullins in center field, Jordan Westberg, although he is nursing an injury, but still should be fine likely for this series, at second base. Colton Cowser, one of their new young guys in left field, and Ramon Urias with Heston Kjerstad, James McCann, Ryan McKinnon, and Jorge Mateo, or Mate, I don't know, whatever. Mateo. Totally messing up names right now for some reason. With their lineup. Joe, I'm just going to say right now, this is probably one of the best lineups in baseball from top to bottom. They are a really, really terrifying team. And let me just quickly, if you don't mind, also read off their hitting, like in terms of left or a righty. We got a lefty, a switch hitter, a lefty, a switch hitter, a righty, a lefty, a righty, a lefty, a righty. They can truly go back and forth as much as you want. They have two really good switch hitters. I mean, Ryan O'Hearn kind of like had been given up on at one point, and he has come back and hit very well for this team. Like the fact that Colton Cowser could probably bat 5 on most lineups and is batting 7th and 8th on this team is pretty wild to me. Cedric Mullins, if you remember, was kind of in MVP discussions over the last few years. He's batting, 5th, 6th. There's no easy way to get through this lineup, and they're young and they're all very good. Heston Kjerstad even specifically may see a little bit more time in this series with us by then. He's one of their top prospects. He can hit the crap out of the ball. This team is deep, man. They are terrifying. I am scared to death that we may get swept in this series, to be honest with you.
Yeah, so this is full disclosure, my AL team I follow. I've been ever since Cal Ripken Jr. played, a big Cal Ripken guy, and they're cool. I know a lot of people say, oh, well, it's Baltimore. You hate that city. Like, it's the Orioles. It's not the Ravens. Chill out. But I think I mentioned that the Braves are a good model for the Reds, but the Orioles are the Reds like a year ahead of time. and they've done a little bit better than us. We're hoping to catch them. That's our hope and dream is these Braves and Orioles teams. They have a lot of young stars. So um, for me, there's some starting pitching injuries for them.
Yep.
CNL Perez is injured as well. Like you said, Craig Kimbrell. So maybe that helps us out in this game, in the series. But you just there's no easy outs. There's like I mean even some of their hitters who aren't doing as well. Santander, you do not want to give him a chance to hit. He only has 4 home runs, but he's batting 218. You don't want to give him a chance to get around on it. Cedric Mullins is 222. I don't think any of us expect that to keep up.
No.
And the young guys are hitting, man. So this is where the Reds want to be. I want to see them I want to see them, take offense to the fact that everyone talks about the Orioles now. And say, hey, we're that young team who's going to be the team everyone's talking about in a year or two here. So that's what I want to see out of them. But in terms of like previewing this, like you're right, like pitching has to be incredible because these hitters are amazing and they're gonna kill the ball in our ballpark.
Oh, no doubt. I will say they do not walk a lot, like at all, but they also don't strike out a lot, and they have the most home runs in baseball. So they are kind of everything you want. That being said, their pitching is the same way. They do not strike out a lot of guys. That makes me slightly hopeful that the Reds lineup can kind of figure it out, considering they don't have a ton of swing and miss guys. They are a lot more pitch to contact, and if that's the case, we have guys who can absolutely run into balls and hit the crap out of it. Our biggest problem has been strikeouts, obviously, but maybe we'll up their strikeout numbers just by ourselves, considering the way we've been hitting lately. I'm going to be, maybe I'm just like in a good mood this week, dude, but I am going to pick them to win one game. And here's the reason why. They are getting our 3 best pitchers in my mind. They are getting Hunter Green, Andrew Abbott, and Nick Lodolo. I think one of those guys is going to have an outstanding outing. I think luckily for us, they have a lot of lefties. We're getting Abbott and Lodolo out there against their lefties. If Hunter Green can capitalize in the way that he did against the Rangers, who have, I think, a similarly strong lineup, I think this Orioles one's definitely better, but you know what I mean? Like there were a lot of good hitters in that Rangers lineup, and he still dominated them. I think the Reds are going to find a way to scrape one out. That's all I'm going to say. I would say I am 50-50 on them winning one game or winning none. If they somehow win 2 games this weekend, then that's another reason to truly just really celebrate, because the Reds will have done something that I think neither you or I have expected. I don't know your prediction, but I'm assuming that that would be correct.
I'm 1-2. I think they win 2 games on the week, and it's a bad week. Rob, I'm a little surprised you didn't take them to win more games against the Orioles because we're not playing any of their good starters. If your theory is we beat bad starters, the starters are kind of banged up right now. We're not getting all the good players that they're going to have at starters. So I'm just a little bit surprised by that. I'm going 1-2 again because my theory is they just don't beat good teams. Like we beat the Phillies by 1 game in the series. That's the only one. I keep on saying that, I know. I want to see us go really battle and play this team really good, especially considering how many good batters they have in their lineup. I don't see a route unless we really get like Ellie taking over games by himself and someone, whether it's Steve or someone else, just kind of helping him to do this. Like I don't see a way we win 2 games in this series or get a sweep. Now I will be happy to be wrong and have us be 4-2 on the week or 3-3 if that does turn out. But I just don't think anything we've seen says this team can go and beat these really, really good teams on a consistent basis. It'll happen. They beat the Phillies series.
Yeah.
But for the most part, we're cleaning up on all those terrible teams. It's time. Hopefully, I'm picking them to go 2-4, but hopefully it's time to step up and we have this tough schedule coming up. Let's rise to the occasion and hopefully make me wrong, Rob.
Yeah, I mean, I will say the reason I think that this will be a higher scoring affair this weekend, specifically. I do think our hitters will do better against these starting pitchers. I just am not as confident in us being able to contain this lineup. Like, I wouldn't be surprised to see some 7-5 games, some 8-6 games, like that kind of stuff. I think our hitting will be fine this weekend for the most part, but I'm truly frightened by this lineup. There is not, like, I would say, and he's batting last for this reason, Ramon Urias is the only one that I am actually like, okay, he's not necessarily a great hitter, but he's been hitting decently well this year. Like, I just like, dude, when Hessen Kjerstad is your backup guy, your lineup is freaking stacked, man. I mean, they are very, very scary. So I know maybe they're not like all hitting super well or whatever, but I really do think it's going to be, I think Great American Ballpark is going to be, if you're in the outfield this weekend, I think you have a higher chance of getting a fly ball than you normally would hit to you. Let's just put it that way, because I do think our hitters will fare well. That's why I think that's literally the only reason I'm picking them to win one game, is that I do think that their starting pitching is not great. I think if we were facing Corbin Burns, I think if John Means was healthy, and I think if I forget Hayes' first name, I think if he was healthy too, and we were going through like their actual like best starting pitching, I would be absolutely at an 0-3 and it wouldn't even be close. I think we would get smoked personally, but that's not to say, by the way, Reds fans, that we aren't a good team or anything. I just think this Orioles team is like a World Series contender right now. So, and we are not.
Definitely.
So that's where I'm at with it. I hope that makes sense, but I am hoping.
I don't know. I had a chance to put your money where your mouth is, and you didn't do it, man. I'm disappointed. All right, let's just see
I don't
what
know
happens.
what you're talking about. There could be two ways that is still true, by the way.
You said that we can beat up on bad pitchers, or we beat up bad pitchers, and we struggle against good starters. We're avoiding the good starters.
All right. You're likely to be able to beat bad pitchers and still lose games. There is a big difference there.
We can. All right, we'll see. I would have thought that maybe you would thought, hey, we're going to score 11 runs on these guys because the pitching's bad and we avoided Corbin Burns. But all right.
Yeah, that will be the game. That'll be the one game we win. So there you go.
Yeah, fair enough. All right. I think this is the best built young roster in baseball, and I'm excited to see it. I did not get a chance to go to the Angels series. I wanted to see Mike Trout. If you get a chance to go out and see Adley Rutschman specifically, he's going to be the best catcher of this generation, maybe the best catcher of the last couple of generations. When he's all said and done, he is that good. Yeah. So I'm excited to go to the game in person and see it, for myself. But I think it's 1 and 2, and I can't pick us to beat good teams when we can't hit the ball or put the ball in play. So that's where
I completely agree with you. But we'll see. Well, I agree with you for the most part, just for a different reason. Yeah. With that, guys, we really do appreciate you watching and listening. Joe and I are, if you can't tell, just having a blast doing this. So please give us a like and a subscribe if you love Reds baseball and you want to hear some more thoughts on it. If you're on Spotify, give us a follow. We're putting these out every single week. As a reminder, over on YouTube as well, we have YouTube Shorts that will be going out pretty consistently, previewing and recapping series and maybe some other stuff moving forward. But yeah, I mean, I think that's really going to be it for us. Let's go Reds and hope that they can find a way to survive this absolute gauntlet of a next month. But yeah, guys, with that, we'll catch you on the next one.